You know, there's always been something unsettling about the woods, something that makes your skin crawl. It was me and my best friend Jim. We were packing our gear for a camping trip, a tradition we've held for the past decade. Our friendship, it was the kind that spanned years, built on shared experiences, laughter, and our mutual love for the great outdoors. As we loaded the tent, sleeping bags and fishing rods into the trunk, our chatter was filled with the usual anticipation and excitement. This time, however, there was a strange undercurrent, a subtle unease that neither of us acknowledged. Our destination was a particular stretch of woods, a place we'd camped before. But the woods, they hold secrets, don't they? Shadows that dance just out of sight, whispers in the rustling leaves, a sense of being watched by unseen eyes. It was our playground, and yet it held an eerie allure, a mystery that we were drawn towards. Little did we know it would be our last trip together. Camping was going as expected until one morning I woke up to find his tent empty. A sense of dread washed over me as I stared at the unzipped entrance swaying gently in the morning breeze. The remnants of last night's fire crackled, casting an eerie glow on the vacant tent. Panic began to set in as I called out his name, my voice echoing through the silent woods. I started to search the surrounding area, hoping to find him gathering wood or exploring a nearby trail. But with each passing minute, the fear gnawed at my insides, growing stronger, more insistent. Each rustle of leaves, each snap of a twig underfoot sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. I imagined his face, his confusion, his fear, all alone in these vast, indifferent woods. The sun began to dip below the treetops, casting long, ominous shadows that seemed to stretch out, reaching for me. As hours rolled into an anxious evening, my calls for him became desperate cries, swallowed by the encroaching darkness. The forest, once a place of beauty and tranquility, had transformed into a labyrinth of dread. The once familiar sounds of nature now sounded sinister, each echoing hoot and rustle, hinting at unseen dangers lurking in the darkness. As night fell, a chilling wind whispered through the trees, hinting at secrets hidden deep within the woods. The next day, a dilapidated cabin appeared in the middle of the woods, a cabin we hadn't noticed before. It was an eerie sight, a relic of a bygone era, its weathered timbers groaning under the weight of time. It stood there, silent and brooding, as if guarding the secrets of the forest. Each creak of its wooden bones sent a shiver down my spine, a sense of foreboding washing over me. Despite the unease, I knew I had to venture into this haunted shell. The need to find my friend was far stronger than the fear that tugged at the fringes of my courage. The decision was made. I would step into the belly of this beast, hoping to unearth any clues about my missing companion. Inside, the cabin was as unsettling as its exterior. Dusty, abandoned artifacts littered the floor, each one hinting at a story that was best left untold. A worn-out doll, a rusty lantern, a moth-eaten blanket, they all hinted at something sinister. Something that didn't quite belong in the realm of the ordinary, and then in the farthest corner of the cabin I found him. There he was, my friend, but something was terribly wrong. His eyes were wide and hollow, his skin as pale as the moonlight filtering through the cabin's dusty window. I could see the swift rise and fall of his chest, the only sign of life in his otherwise still form. He was bound to a rickety wooden chair, his hands twisted in odd angles, a sight so horrifying it made my heart clench in my chest. His lips, cracked and dry, began to move, but the words were barely more than whispers, lost in the wind. I leaned in closer, my ear almost touching his mouth. His voice, once boisterous and full of life, was now a raspy echo of its former self. He spoke of eerie shadows that danced on the cabin walls, of whispers that echoed in the dead of night, of hands that reached out from the darkness. His words painted a picture of a grim reality that was hard to comprehend, a reality that was hidden behind the serene beauty of the woods. His warnings about the cabin were cryptic, his voice shaking with every word. His gaze, once full of warmth, was now a cold stare filled with fear and something else, something darker. With terror in his eyes, he whispered, "We were never alone in these woods." We had to bolt, leave the shack and the forest. We didn't waste a second. We were panting and hearts racing as fast as we were. The woods, once our safe place, was now a scary maze. The tall trees looked like quiet guards, their long shadows reaching out in the moonlight. Then we hit the road, our safe zone. We felt relief, but it was mixed with the fear from what we had found. The ride back home was a blur, the quiet heavy with things we didn't say. Everything after was like a weird dream. We tried to keep going, but we were different now. We weren't just two buddies who liked nature, we were getting through a nightmare we barely understood. Made it, but that shack stays in our dreams. Sometimes I swear I can still hear the wind from those haunted woods.